just exactly a year ago, in the same place, we had an interview with you. My colleague Natalie took it, and it was a completely different time for Ukraine. It was a creeping fear of escalation in the east. The war just had begun, and now we see 24 hours of technical ceasefire. Do you find this change? Do you see this change already happening in Ukraine, or do you think that it's kind of freak accident and we still don't know what's going to happen next?
So I think in Ukraine more and more people are thinking about how can we deal with the situation as it is without risking more lives of our citizens. So the idea that a ceasefire could help is much more in the discussion, and so also seen in a more positive way than 1 year ago. And I think so there is an opportunity, but we should not forget that to have an ongoing, more peaceful situation in the East requires two sides. And nobody, and this was also clear in today's discussion, nobody really knows what's going on in the Kremlin and what the Kremlin's final goal in this conflict in East Ukraine is.
So do you share the same sentiment? Because for me, it's kind of a year ago or now, you still cannot predict anything what is going to happen in a year ahead.
So I think that the worst fears we had 1 year ago, that a kind of invasion would continue on the territory of Ukraine, the worst fears so until today were wrong, and so it developed in a different way. It developed more and more into not yet frozen conflict, but a conflict now with a chance to be controlled in this area. I don't like the situation, but I would like to deal with the situation to the better for Ukrainians and for the country.
It's like Victoria Nuland said that the Novorossiya project is dead, for example. It's not happening. We don't see a lot of Ukrainian provinces joining this concept of Novorossiya.
So as far as I see the situation, so the propaganda by Russian channels and Russian media and Russian trolls to make Ukraine an unstable country in more regions than Lugansk, Donetsk. So this failed so far. There is still a support for change. There are doubts on projects in the government. People are not satisfied with the progress made, but this doesn't mean that they turn away from Kiev and taking direction Moscow or Russia.
You're actually one of the strongest voices at the Euro Parliament when it comes to the Ukrainian crisis. And a year ago, it was really hard to get attention from people paying attention to the crisis. Now it's completely different. But at the same time, do you feel still kind of a lone voice in the European Parliament, or is it different now?
So until today, we get on the issues on Ukraine in votes in the European Parliament huge majorities. We voted a resolution on the cases of Sentsov, Kolchenko and Kovar this week, and we got even a majority.
Ukrainian hostages in Russia.
So the Ukrainian prisoners, political prisoners, meanwhile sentenced, very, very awful sentenced, and we got a huge majority in solidarity with them, and even a majority to try to establish Magnitsky-like sanctions against those in the judiciary in Russia.
Wouldn't be possible a year ago.
So wouldn't I doubt it? I doubt it. A year ago, I don't know whether the names would have been reflected. So Sentsov, meanwhile, also because of the big support from colleagues in the film business, very well-known directors, for example, even from Russia. So Sentsov is well-known, and he is triggering with his speech, for example, a very good speech, a lot of support in the European Union. So we have in the European Parliament a majority to push Ukraine, to help Ukraine, to invest in Ukraine. But so we have also our demands towards Ukraine. And what I think is a good issue during this conference is, so Ukraine, the elites, the society as such, they have also to move, and they have to do their progress. They have to try to be more ambitious on many levels for change, especially on top.
And faster,
but also more transparent. So I followed some of the panels, and I would recommend the ministers, for example, to be more precise with their next targets and priorities. For example, how they want to fight corruption, how they want to change civil services. What are the next steps that they have to change is clear. What are the next steps? Then they have to talk to the people in the civil services. They have to talk to the people about what's going to change. And if they fail, they must explain to the people why they fail. So it's not only necessary to make better communication, but to really communicate on what you are doing and where are the obstacles, etc.
When you see those posts of rising dissatisfaction, and you travel to Ukraine a lot, and you speak to those people at ministries, and you and I both know that they can tell you a lot about what they do, what they're trying to change. The Ukrainian parliament has passed over 350 reformist law in the last year, which is insanely huge. But at the same time, when you go to regular Ukrainians, they don't know nothing about it. They feel like everything is getting worse, the economy is getting worse, and they don't know any except police reform, any bright reform they can relate to.
So I think still in Ukraine, so the distance in between the political elites and the normal citizens is too big. So it's so necessary to bridge those gaps in between those who are making the laws and those who shall understand and live with the laws. What I saw during my summer holidays, for example, so among villagers in Transcarpathia, was that they have very interesting discussions. Some appreciate what is changing, others do not know. Others are doubting it, but they have not really the possibility to connect with their locally elected member of parliament. So
nobody talks to them.
So as I say, so it's communication doesn't only mean public relation. Communication is to communicate with those who shall vote next time for you. And I think most of the Ukrainians understand that the change which we need in Ukraine is a huge change, is not done in 1 year or one legislation. And the more they can directly communicate with their politicians, the better there are the chances against populism. Populism is another way of propaganda and public relation in politics, but against populism you can work only with the real communication in between the people, the citizens, and the politicians.
I think the Ukrainian government will, at least trying to do the job of promoting their successes. But
what is not wrong, but so this kind of promoting activities shall not lead into a situation that if there are questions or doubts or complaints, that they say no. everything is fine. So you have to work with the doubts of your citizens, and you have to show that you take it serious. This makes the difference in between propaganda and promotion and real communication.
Actually, it's not only about economy, right? There are social developments inside the country, especially post-revolutionary. Right? So, for example, we've heard a speech of Sir Elton John right now begging to protect LGBT human rights in Ukraine because the situation got worse in the last year, partially because violence against LGBT people in Ukraine is not being condemned by any official on any level. But at the same time, a lot of people here, they say that you have to establish not only a successful economy, you have to establish a dynamic democracy that protects human rights of everyone. Why do you think that it's still not a priority, especially if people try to disposition themselves in face of Russia?
So I come from Germany. I know that the situation we have now achieved in Germany, for example, as a European member state, for equal rights for gay and lesbian and other people is much better than in Ukraine or in other European countries, especially in the East. But in the same time, I know how long it took to go and to achieve what we achieved, and so Ukraine is, so I would say right now, so maybe 10 or 20 years back in this evolution. But so it was a very good decision by Mr. Pinchuk to invite Elton John and to push from a very prominent level in society, and with so a musician globally known for equal rights and for Ukraine, so a country fighting for democracy and the rule of law and freedom and respect. So because this I remember pretty well as main ideas in Euromaidan for a country of Ukraine is a huge chance.
Quality.
Not to wait too long, to achieve a better quality of democracy now and not to wait another 5 or 10 years. I liked that Elton John invited the Ukrainians to make their advantages with the equal rights approach, but I liked also that he was realistic, so that he's not coming as a British or an Irishman and preaching here, but explaining it's a way to go.
Now, obviously, they're not talking about marriage equality. It's just about basic violence, protection from violence.
It's a starting point, but so in his speech, so he complained a lot on what happened on the Gay Pride this year. This was very good to say this explicitly in this audience, because many politicians, many lawmakers, so they have been here and they heard it. But beyond this, he really described the advantages of true democratic society based on equal rights for everybody, whatever sexual orientation, religion, or color they are.